about the great American poet Ruth Stone, who's now in her 90s. And here's what the speaker said. When Miss Stone was just a child growing up in rural Virginia, she would be working out in the fields, and she would literally hear and feel a poem come barreling at her. She said the earth would shake under her ground. On the ground, the earth would shake. It sounded like a thundering train of air. And she knew there was only one thing that she could do, run like crazy. So she started taking off and running towards her house. It was like she was being chased by this poem. And all she thought of was she had to get a piece of paper, she had to get a pen, because when the poem finally thundered through her, she wanted to grab it and put it down on the page. Some of us are so open to the divine that even when we're not ready for it, it comes like a thunderbolt. My oldest and dearest friend in the world, Lisa Prilliman, raise your hand, Lisa. Y'all say, hey, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Lisa's wonderful. She's an amazing person. She spent 5 years taking care of her mother. Her mother lived in excruciating pain. Her mother was bedridden. Her mother was living with debilitating rheumatoid arthritis. And after spending 14 straight hours with her one day, Lisa was driving in her car, because it took her hours just to get there to take care of her every weekend. She was driving home, and she was overwrought with grief and exhaustion. And so she screams out to the universe, I can't take this anymore. She was crying hysterically. I can't do this anymore. As soon as those words left her lips, she heard this loud, booming voice that said, stop it! Calm down. We are with you. We always have been. You don't have to do this alone. Let us help you. As soon as she heard that voice, she went in an instant from hysteria to silence. It was like a gentle stillness filled her car, and she felt like she was wrapped in the arms of love. And she knew everything was going to be okay. Sometimes the voice of spirit is so loud that it literally knocks us to our knees. Now, how many of you have been chased across a field by a poem? How many of you have heard the voice of James Earl Jones in your car, because that's how she describes it? Maybe it was.
On my GPS.
The truth is most of us have not, because typically spiritual messages are much more subtle, but they're always there. Sometimes it's a soft yearning for something more. Sometimes it's a gentle inner knowing that it's time for a change. Sometimes it's a message from a stranger, or the perfect lyric to a song, or a line from a page in a book that jumps up and answers the very question you were searching for. And sometimes, though, it's that small, still voice that comes to us and leads us on our life's journey and tells us what our life's purpose is. It usually comes when we're at a crossroads, and it always arrives exactly when we need it. And what it calls us to do is this, is to be still and to know that it is the voice of God. First slide. Be still. Let's say this the way we know to say it. Be still and know that I am God. It also calls us to have faith in what we hear. Next slide. Say it with me. Truly I say to you, whoever says this to the mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt it in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Amen. So this voice calls to us. It asks us to hear it first. Then it asks us to believe. And the third thing that we forget about sometimes, it pushes us to take action. Today we celebrate Palm Sunday. This was the day that Jesus made his triumphant ride into Jerusalem. When he crossed into the holy city, it was reported that the cheering from the crowd was deafening. They laid down palm leaves and coats for him to cross over. They hailed Jesus as their king. Here he was, their political savior, who was going to save them and rescue them and free them from the Romans. Now, Jesus knew the celebration was going to be short-lived because he had no intention of going to war. He had a different purpose. He had come here to teach the world about love, the greatest power in the universe. And you know what? There was a time when Jesus, like many of us, was at a crossroads too. There was a time when he asked himself, should I do this, just become this person that I'm being called to be by these people? Or should I become who I know I'm being called to be? And because he didn't know, he searched for the answer. He listened for the voice because he was struggling. He went to the mountaintop. You remember the story? He went to the mountaintop and he stayed there for a long time. And he listened and he meditated and he prayed and he listened until he heard it. And with faith that could move a mountain, he surrendered to his purpose and he changed the world forever. In his short ministry, he taught us that we all have the capacity to be the light. He taught us that birth is not a beginning and death is not an ending, but a continuation of life itself. He expanded the potential of human consciousness by telling us that we can do greater things than even he, because we have the power of God within us. I don't know the details of exactly how Jesus lived 2,000 years ago, but I do know he lives now in the lessons that he taught us and the love that he gave us. He showed us that if we want to commune with the divine, all we have to do is go to that quiet place within. And when it happens, like Jesus, we will have a rebirth of our souls. Last week, I asked you for some stories. I put a call out. I said, give me your stories. Probably tired of hearing my stories. So I asked you for your stories of courage and faith and times that you've listened for that inner voice that's calling to you. Several people responded. Thank you very much. They were beautiful. And I'd like to share a few of those with you now. It was 2012, and the Unity Board of Trustees was holding its vision retreat with their minister, Catherine Klein, in Brown Summit, North Carolina. Nancy Duran, Nancy, raise your hand. Let's give Nancy a hand. A shout out to Nancy. Nancy Duran was a great friend of mine, and she was an amazing board member, was there, trying to participate, but she was feeling a little bit restless. You see, Nancy had been a teacher for 20 years. She'd recently been retired, and she was feeling a little bit directionless. Ever felt that way in your life? This woman is on fire, but she was missing some of that passion and zest that she'd felt in her life, and she knew there was something more for her, but not sure what. So when our minister, Catherine Klein, said, we are going to relax and listen to Michael Beckwith take us through a vision, she just couldn't do it. Now sometimes she told me the other day, maybe it's because I have adult ADD. Or maybe it's because I hate being told what to do. Perhaps that's it. I don't think so. I think Spirit had bigger things in mind for her. Try as she might, she couldn't settle her mind. Try as she might, she could not focus on visioning for the church, so she decided just to set her mind free, and when she did, she had the most amazing experience. Here's what happened. She first settled in and started listening. That didn't work. That didn't work. So she decided, okay, I'm really going to set my mind free. And when she really made that decision to let go, this is what happened. Her mind was filled, and all she could see was blackness. That's all she could see. She sat there with it and started feeling more and more relaxing. And then she remembers being filled with joy because out of the void, a beautiful sunrise lit up the morning sky. And she could see that she was standing on the tallest cliff, and all she could see for miles around were the tops of green trees. And she noticed that she was trapped. Up to the right was a really high inclination, and to the left was a ladder. Without being told, she knew instinctively that ladder went down into the rainforest. She also knew she was in South America. She just knew it. She remembers asking herself, should I get on that ladder and go, or should I stay put? But she couldn't move. She was frozen in her tracks. In a little while, all she could hear were children's laughter. And that brought her peace. She looked ahead. She saw them. They smiled at her, and they disappeared. And then she woke up. Like, that wasn't our new church. I'm sure of it. But she didn't know what it was. she was confused. So she went home and was talking to her daughter about it. And her daughter said, Mom, it's clear that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get on that ladder and you're supposed to take a risk. But Nancy did not take a risk. She continued to stay home and kind of sit with it. And one night she was watching television in her beautiful townhouse all by herself, just sitting there. And she felt something slap her on the back of her shoulder. She turned around. She's like, I'm really scared. Am I going crazy? She was alone. She thought she dreamt it. She sat there for a few more minutes, and it hit her again. So she finally said, okay, God, I am paying attention. Okay, that's the message. I'll do something. For a long time, she thought about making a difference in the world and becoming certified in English as a second language and going across the planet somewhere and teaching. Because her vision was in South America, she thought that was it. So she immediately got her certification, driving back and forth to Charlotte every weekend. Then she started applying for jobs in Costa Rica. Yeah, I'm getting this story right. She got 4 interviews right off the bat, but none of them worked out. So she decided again, she'd sit down and say, God, where do you want me to go? The very next day, one of her friends mentioned Panama, just out of the blue. Now keep in mind, all Nancy knew was there's some kind of canal in Panama, and that's everything she knew about Panama. But she took it as God's guidance, and she decided to go home and look on Craigslist, and she saw there was a job. She applied for it, and she had the position by 4 in the afternoon. As soon as she accepted that job, she felt free. She said she got on a plane, let go, and let God, and never looked back, and never once was afraid. Her time in Panama was very simple. She cooked on a 2-burner stove. You ever seen where she lives now? Can you imagine this lady cooking on a 2-burner stove? What she did, and her high heels cooking on a 2-burner stove. She got some Tito's. She cooked on a 2-burner stove. She had no car. You seen that slick car she drives? She had no car. Everywhere she went, she had to take a bus. She did not speak the language, but she spoke the language of their heart. Now, this wasn't trouble-free. She had learned early on, though, to listen to the voice of God. She started out teaching adults. A few months later, she started teaching their version of elementary school. But then one day, she had an altercation with a very strong 3rd grader who tried to strangle her. And she knew, I think I better be moving on, but she was afraid. She was in a strange country without a job. She got very still, and the voice said, it's okay. Let it go. I will catch you. She left that job and immediately landed the job that she was supposed to have. She landed a job tutoring 3 boys in their home. And this was the family she knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was supposed to meet. These were the people that would change her life. These were the people in which she changed their lives. The hardest thing for Nancy while she was in Panama is there was no Unity Church. So she kept Googling over and over again, thinking it was going to magically come up, and it never did. Until one day, a group came up, it popped up, and it said, Spirit Quest. She thought, that must be where I'm supposed to go. But she didn't think she'd be able to get there because she knew it would be so far away. But when she did research as to how far away it was, she found out it was only 2 blocks from where she lived. Once again, Spirit was leading her exactly where she needed to go. When she arrived, there was a station wagon in the driveway that said Flow Motors on it. Flow Motors is in Raleigh, North Carolina. This couple was from Venezuela, actually had lived in North Carolina once again. And here's a woman that's tapped in. She's been in Unity for a long time. She knew Spirit is guiding me. She knew I'm supposed to meet them. I'm supposed to dive deep. I'm supposed to be in their lives, and they will be in each other's lives forever. Nancy loved her time in Panama, and here's why. She got that passion and zest back for life that she felt like she was missing. She learned that she could do anything she wanted to do even after retirement. And she was filled with an outpouring of love that she hadn't felt in a long time, perhaps since her partner made his transition. Her life will be forever changed. But here's the thing. Nancy left thinking that she was going to change the world, and I'm sure you did. But more than anything, she came back changed. She came back reborn. We all desire to have that kind of spiritual pilgrimage. We don't know where to start. We don't know what steps to take. Sometimes, if you're paying attention, the steps are dropped for you and the messages are given to you just like breadcrumbs. Karen Nance, raise your hand. There she is. You guys give a little shout out to Karen? Hi, Karen. Karen Nance moved to Greensboro in 2011 with her partner and their 2 children. I love you, Karen. In many ways, Karen had felt alone for most of her life. She struggled to feel like she could find her place. But when she moved to Greensboro, things really started to change, because that's when she started to pay attention, listen to the voice of Spirit, and to understand that God is here, not somewhere outside herself. But this was a journey, and I'd like to share it with you now. Karen started looking for a house. So she contacted a realtor. She said, I want to introduce you to someone, who later became her landlord. But the person they introduced her to, that someone, was Francis Quintez. Francis Quintez, the perpetual marketer of Unity Church, immediately, in their first conversation, started selling Unity Church to Karen Nance. And Karen remembers thinking, this lady's really nice, but why is she trying to save me? Karen had been away from the church, and she thought away from God for a long time, and she didn't have any intention of going back. Now, as she looks back, she realizes that was the first message in a series of messages that she was to receive. Shortly after that, someone suggested that she apply for an opening at Volvo, which she did, and she got. And when she was there, on about the 2nd or 3rd day, she was met with a great surprise. The person she had met a few weeks earlier actually worked there, Francis Quintez. Karen started to wake up a little bit. She started to feel something differently. She started to think, maybe this isn't a coincidence. I don't know. So she entered in a conversation with Francis, who again started talking about Unity Church. Francis started talking about all the great classes that we had here. And this time, Karen said, okay, I agree. I will at least look on the website. And when she did, she saw faces that she knew. Again, taking this as another sign and another message, she agreed to come to church here. And she said that was one of the most life-transforming and changing days of her entire time on this earth. For when she walked in the doors here at Unity, she knew immediately that she was not alone. She knew she had found her spiritual family. She knew she was here with kindred spirits. And she dove in. She started getting the desire to learn and take classes. But Charlotte LaHecca has so many classes, it's kind of overwhelming. You don't know which one to take. And one day she was looking at this giant brochure with all these classes on it, and she saw Grief and Recovery, Ellie's beautiful class. It was like it jumped out at her. She knew she was supposed to take that, another God sign. And so she did. And when she took the class, she learned so many wonderful things, that we have the healing power within us, that we are all children and expressions of the divine, and we were already whole. It was quite a journey that you were on, right? And then last September, Karen was in a terrible car accident. Or was it terrible? Because when she was in the hospital, that's when the doctors discovered that she had a melanoma. But she was ready for this. Ellie's class, what she learned in Unity, had prepared her for this moment. She knew she wouldn't just survive it, but she would thrive. She knew that she could tap into the power of healing inside of her, and she learned that right here in this church. Karen quickly healed from this cancer, quickly. And a lot of people say to her, oh, it's because you're just so lucky you were in that car wreck. She knows differently now. She knows it was a divinely inspired path that led her to that moment and prepared her for that moment. Today, Karen is continuing on with her journey. She's continuing to study. She's continuing to grow and expand. And more than anything, she is continuing to pay attention and to listen to all those messages that are always there for us. A few weeks ago, she was in a store, and she picked up a Justin Bieber CD. Justin Bieber. On the outside of the CD, it said, believe. And on the inside, it said, God exists. The third story I want to share with you is from a beautiful congregant who I just adore, and it is Lori Hamilton. Lori, raise your hand. Come on now, raise it. Don't you guys love Lori? Yes. Next slide, please. This is what Lori's email said to me. She's given me permission to share it, by the way. I've been thinking, I most need faith and courage right now to follow my passions in terms of career. I get very excited about lots of ideas that I have, then let them ebb away. I need both courage to act upon them as well as persistence, and to trust in myself. I tend to ask, what do I have to offer? And so many others are better suited, more experienced, more, etc., etc. To follow the little urges, quiet callings will lead me step by step, but I need to take the steps. Lori is at a crossroads. She's being called to her purpose. She's being called to use her gifts. She's being called to find her path. So what's stopping her? What is stopping you? What's stopping all of us? She gave me permission to use her as an example. What is stopping all of us? I believe we need to follow the steps that were given to us by Jesus. And the first one is to listen. Listen to the spiritual messages that are always being provided to us, or to look for them. And she's listening. Lori's heard it. She's got that inner yearning. She's got that calling. She knows something is calling to her. She can just move towards it. So what's stopping her? Again, what's stopping all of us? Fear. Fear. Good answer. Absolutely. And that goes along with the next step. Thank you, David. Faith. Some people might say that Lori doesn't have enough faith, but I disagree. Here's what Marianne Williamson says about it. She says, there's really no such thing as a faithless person. It's what we choose to put our faith in. In other words, are you putting your faith in the right thing? Are we putting our faith in the circumstances around us? Are we putting our faith in self-doubt and fear? Baby? Or are we putting our faith in God? And the idea that anything is possible. You see, faith is a matter of consciousness. And these ideas like blame and judgment and doubt, that's just misapplied faith. It's really weird. We as a society have more faith in the power of cancer to kill us than God to heal us. But the truth is you are a child of God. And you have all the power that God shares with all of us. You are made of the same stuff that the universe is made of. But to activate this, we have to align our mind with the mind of God. That means we have to surrender to the divine. Next slide. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Some of you are going, wow, she's really old school today. Stay with me. Sacred texts and scriptures have hidden truths. They have hidden truths that can change your life forever. What does this mean? This means, and what I've learned in Unity and what I've learned from my path of 28 years, is that we have to surrender to love, because that's what God is. That means we have to put faith and surrender to the higher vibratory positive thoughts versus the negative ones. You know what? I think we're all being called right now. I know I am. We're all being called right now to maintain and hold those positive thoughts and maintain that high vibration even in the midst of darkness. No matter what the circumstances are in our lives, we have to choose the higher path. We've all had hard times. We have. I have too. We've all had hard times. But I've known millionaires who have ended up poor. I've known people that are so healthy end up facing disease. And on the flip side of it, did you know that more millionaires were made during the Depression than any other time in history? But nobody ever talks about that. There's been times in my life when I've been so heartbroken, I didn't think I could make it. Or when I've been in such financial despair, I didn't know which way to turn. And when I focused on those problems, I just became more broken open than I already was. And it was during those times that I always remembered what Jesus said, to get still and to listen and to align my thoughts with the thoughts of God, raise my vibration and come out on the other side. But I had to find that vibration, and I had to focus my faith on what is good instead of what is wrong. It's easier said than done, right? Easier said, we're all people here. It's easier said than done because we live in a world with a 24-hour-a-day news cycle of what is wrong with the world. And we live in a society where we have financial issues and we have relationship problems and our hearts do get broken. So how do we maintain our God mind? How do we align? A few weeks ago, Rich Slens speaks here. He's one of my business partners. I love working with Rich, liking it more and more. Rich and I was doing a workshop called Positivity in the Workplace. And we were doing it for a group of parole officers. And we based our program off of a study that said this. People, when asked, are basically unhappy at work. But if they engage in 5 simple activities and changes, if they do these 5 things, positivity goes way up, happiness goes up, stress goes down, and success goes up. Stay with me. I promise this is going to have some relevance. Here are the 5 things that they're instructing companies and employees to do. 1, gratitude. Every day, for 21 days, you've heard that before, they're asking these employees to write down 3 things that they are grateful for. It takes how long to break a habit? It takes how long to create a new paradigm? 21 days. A new lens of how we see the world. Sounds like a unity message, right? So, next slide. The only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Next slide. The second thing they're asking these employees to do is journal. At the end of the day, journal on one positive experience you had from that day for 21 days. Sounds like a unity message, doesn't it? Next slide. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Is that the third principle? Okay, good. Third principle. Third step they're asking employees to do is this. Next slide. Meditate. Wow, asking corporate America to meditate. Yes. Next slide. Through affirmative prayer and meditation, I connect with God and bring out the good in my life. Unity, 4th principle. Next step. Exercise, moving the chi through our body. Tai Chi here on Tuesday nights. Next slide. Random acts of kindness. They're asking people just to send out nice emails to each other at IBM. Next slide. It is necessary that we give freely if we are to receive freely. Charles Fillmore. Sounds like a unity lesson, doesn't it? They have found that the results are astounding. People are walking into the workplace going, the energy just feels better. I don't know how to explain it. People are saying they love going to work. And it's not just the feeling, their success rates, their creativity, and they're taking more risks, and they're stepping out, and they're being more work than they thought was possible. We have to do the same thing. We know this in here. We learn affirmative prayer. We learn all these things. We're on this spiritual journey. But sometimes we forget the steps that will help us keep our mind aligned with God. You've got to be careful of what you put your faith in. It's not enough to have faith. You've got to put it in the right stuff. The final step that I want to share with Lori and all of us today is action. 5th principle, action. Jesus taught us about going within and listening or looking. Taught us about having faith and having courage. And the 3rd step is action. Okay, you guys, if you're cruising down the road and the road you're on is straight and true, just keep on going about your business. Thank God every day for your blessings and know that you are blessed and you are fortunate. But if you sense and see that there's some fog in the air and you find yourself at a crossroads, get out of your car and stand in the night air and listen. And either in the silence or the rumbling thunder, you will hear it. The sign will be there if you ask for it. And when you're given that sign, I want you to take action. And what that means is you have to move towards something. To move towards it. It's come to you. It gave you the message. And now you have to move towards it. And it might be that you need to make a new career move in Panama. Perhaps you're going to make a decision to go on a serious healing journey of the body and the soul. Maybe it's that you decide to write a book, or you change jobs, or you change relationships. Whatever it is for you, know it is yours to do. And when you make this change, remember, you've got to be using your gifts, your own gifts. Everybody is here. We are birthed. You know I believe this. I say it over and over again. You are born with your gifts, and those are the ones that you want to put in action because that will bring you joy and bliss. Next slide. Our dreams are waiting for us to come true. People ask me all the time, how will I know if I'm doing what I'm meant to do? How will I know If I'm being all that I can be, how do I know? I'm here to tell you, you will know. Because it's based on how you feel. You will feel in the flow. You'll feel happy. You'll feel joyful. You will feel like sharing with your neighbor. You will feel aligned with the divine. You will feel one with all there is. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, she tells us about this state of oneness in one of her books. She said, centuries ago in the deserts of North Africa, these groups and these tribes would gather together for moonlight dances. They would do sacred dance and song for hours and hours until the dawn. And she said every now and then, it was rare, but every now and then something magical would happen. Because it's like one of these dancers would become transcendent. It was like they'd stepped through a portal, as if time stood still, and they just seemed like they were no longer human. When people looked at them, it seemed like they were lit up from below and lit up from within and surrounded with divinity. And when the people saw it, they knew it for what it was. They called it by name. They would raise their hands and they would chant, Allah, 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 God, God, God. When Jesus rode into Jerusalem that day, he was transcendent. He knew his purpose. He knew what he was here to do. And he was lit up. And the crowds yelled, Hosanna, Hosanna